Great to see people coming in now because we are going to begin really, really shortly in a matter of seconds. So if everybody could make their way to their seats, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Yay. Oh, thank you. I don't know what I did to deserve that. I'm Wendy Grace. I'm going to be emceeing today and making sure things run smoothly. Just a few housekeeping rules. First of all, obviously just take note of the exits. The toilets are at the back. When there's a break at lunchtime, you've already seen where you can get teas and coffees and all that sort of stuff. It's great to have you here, and obviously people filtering in from your workshops. If you're at one, I hope that you enjoyed it and you got a lot out of it. It's amazing to think this is our first in-person conference since 2019. So it's just great to be back in person, but a lot's been happening over the past few years, and I see familiar faces here from different initiatives that I've been connected to as well. Things like the monthly webinars that have been happening, and often we would have, 500 people logging on to these things. It's the silver lining of the pandemic, isn't it, that many of us were able to gather at different things virtually from all across the country that we mightn't have been able to do. And I've been blessed enough to do the Future Leaders workshops with young people from across the country, again, online, and communications workshops. And I've been really encouraged by these things because I've been involved in the pro-life movement for, 10 or 12 years. And every month I would do one of these workshops, I would see new faces from across the country, all ages, such diverse backgrounds, which just gave me real encouragement and hope, just thinking there's still so many new, fresh faces connected to the pro-life movement. So I hope that you get some encouragement from that, from just me sharing that experience. But obviously, the Zooms are no substitute for being back in person together today. So I hope that you do take the time to chat with people, connect with people, get that just sense of we are not alone, that energy again. It might feel like there's been loads of pro-life events in the past few months. Maybe some of you were at the pro-life ball and that, or some of the regional marches that took place, or indeed the rally that took place in Dublin. And you might think, wow, that was a lot of events, but we had a lot to make up for after just being locked down for the last 2 years. One of the things that I suppose is important about participating in these events is to get that energy to be reinvigorated, because it's understandable that some of us might feel a bit fatigued. But I hope that recent events, like for example what we've seen happen in the United States with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, will give you the energy that you need to continue to know that each day, each month, each week, each year that you are involved with pro-life initiatives are worth it. And it's been wonderful just to be part of these things. Now, the theme of today's conference is Saving Lives and Facing the Future with Hope. So I hope we're left feeling hopeful today. We're going to focus on a number of areas nationally and internationally where there's positive initiatives happening, that over time, hopefully, we will see things moving in a pro-life direction. One of the things I take encouragement from, and I unfortunately have to see all the time how politicians and media ignore the pro-life issue, but I take encouragement from the fact that they don't want to debate these issues because they are afraid of the truth that we're trying to point out. And so it's easier to try and bury them. So that's why it's our job to make sure that we keep raising them and educating ourselves on these issues so we can share them with people. So I hope that you learn some things today that you can share. Things just like educating people on the humanity of the unborn baby, that we never stop speaking up about the injustice of abortion, not only the betrayal to the baby, but also to the woman as well. I'm constantly fascinated when I'm doing research for the We Are Human podcast that I do for the Pro-Life campaign, and every month I do a new fact about the baby's development. And even though I've had 3 babies myself, and every time I have my app telling me about your baby's the size of a banana and all the different things, I'm still fascinated and still learning. Just for example, one from a recent podcast was at 15 weeks, a baby's sense of taste starts forming. You know, and they can start hearing as well and recognizing the mum's voice. These are the things that we have to keep sharing with people. These amazing facts that people didn't know 10, 20, 30 years ago. That's the positive, that's the beautiful. And the other thing that we'll learn and talk a little bit about today is the cover-up of stories in the name of protecting this holy grail of abortion for some. I'll be talking about that a little bit later on. At the conference today, we're very privileged to have guest speakers who are so courageous, so fearless, and they're saving lives. But I want you all to know that through the things that you have done, you may never know the seeds that you've planted, you may never know the lives that you've touched, you may never know the lives that you've saved, but it's perfectly conceivable to think that every person in this room, through the things that you've done, have saved a life. And there's no greater honour or cause than that. I hope you agree. That's the thing that underpins the pro-life movement. So hopefully we'll take hope from the work that's happening, the work that you're doing, and we'll leave here just with a new vigour and a new hope as well. It's great to introduce you today our first speaker, Elaine Noonan, who's involved with Community Connect. I think if we're going to be authentically pro-life, we have to do the practical as well and provide the supports that women in unplanned pregnancy need. And she's going to share with you just some of the amazing work that they're doing and in their initiative, and talk about just other things at the coalface, helping mothers, things like Jana Care you've also seen here. But it'd be great to just hear a little bit from Elaine about the work that Community Connect is doing. Elaine, thank you so much for all you do, and come on up.
Thank you, Wendy. It's lovely to be here, and thanks so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to say hello to everyone and to be up here. So, as many of you know already, I'm Elaine and I'm the Programme Manager of Community Connect. And I see loads of familiar faces out there, so loads of you know as much as I do about Community Connect already. But for the benefit of maybe anyone who's out there who doesn't, I'll just give you a bit of an overview of what we do and who we are. And the impact that Community Connect has as well. So as many of you know, Community Connect exists to help pregnant mothers and families of small children who are really struggling to make ends meet and provide for their families. We operate all across the Republic of Ireland, and we help parents in need with baby equipment, clothing and essential items for their babies. And we usually help pregnant mothers, quite a lot of pregnant mothers, and also mothers with young babies up to about the age of 4 years, generally. Sometimes we go beyond that in special circumstances, but that's generally our demographic. So we really exist to alleviate poverty and to lessen the burden on families that are struggling financially. And of course, you know, it helps to promote the culture in our society as well of, you know, being positive and being enthusiastic and being happy about new babies coming into the world in whatever circumstances they may be coming into the world, even if that's difficult. So many families as well who are finished with their baby equipment and clothing are delighted to have a way to repurpose that and pass it on to another family who might use it again rather than have it gathering dust in the attic. And they're very enthusiastic about giving them to an organisation like us who can efficiently and effectively facilitate that for them. So we know who needs it and we know where they are and we can get it to them efficiently. And also, of course, reusing baby clothes and baby equipment has a very positive environmental impact, and we pride ourselves on the fact that we're saving a lot of stuff from going to landfill. And of course, the environmental concerns are very much on everyone's radar at the moment. So as well as the used items, we also give a beautiful gift package to every mother who contacts us for help. In particular, the pregnant mums, we like to look after them very specially. And we have a baby box, which many of you might be aware of. It contains lots of essential items, like basically a starter pack for a pregnant mother. And if you come and visit us at our stand, which is just outside the curtains during the day, we have a baby box there, all of the bits and pieces, and lots of our volunteers will be around and they can show you exactly what's in it. You might like to see that. One of the lovely things we include in those is a hand-knitted item, and we've got fabulous knitters. Actually, one of the ladies here today dropped us some beautiful hand-knitted items just on her way in, so thank you very much for that. And we're always delighted to get the hand-knit items because it's a personal touch to give to the mothers, the pregnant mums that we help. We also assist with hospital bags as well for mothers who need them for hospital, and we do what we call a baby bag for people with older babies as well. And again, you can see all of those down in the stand if you're interested. So our work has had and continues to have a very big impact. So we're helping between 15 and 25 families every single week across the country. To give you a sense of the scale of the work we are doing, I'm going to give you some figures that we had during 2021. So for the whole of the year of 2021. So we supported over 750 families during 2021 and delivered almost 1,000 packages of support across the country. We gave out over 370 buggies, over 300 baby boxes, over 750 packages of clothes for young children, over 185 cots and cribs and another 100 Moses baskets, over 100 bouncer seats and over 70 high chairs. And that's not to mention all the other bits and bobs that go with it and all the other accoutrements that go with little babies as well. So the ongoing high level of demand for our service really shows the need for it in Ireland. So we provide support to parents from all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of situations. Many families contact us directly, and they might be finding things very tough at the current time. So we would have had a lot of families struggling during COVID. And now, of course, the cost of living is increasing very rapidly, and a lot of families are struggling for that reason. Some may have lost jobs, and some might just need a little dig out with the big financial impact of having a new baby, which maybe wasn't planned for or expected. We also accept referrals from lots of different organisations who work with people in homelessness and poverty. We have brilliant relationships with most of the major maternity hospitals in the country and very strong working relationships in Dublin, Cork, Kilkenny and Limerick, Galway, with all of the hospitals there and some of the other ones as well. We work with youth support and family support organisations, domestic violence shelters, direct provision centres and refugee support services, and all kinds of organisations helping those in poverty. And we've really great working relationships with some specific organisations. Many of the organisations who do send people to us for support have commented very positively on the value of the work we do, stating that the support that we provide is just not available anywhere else for them. Although some financial supports are available from the state to support qualifying new parents in need, and I use that word qualifying because not everyone qualifies, Often they don't stretch far enough to cover all of the expenses of a new baby, particularly a first baby. And some new parents might have recently just arrived into the country as migrants or asylum seekers. They don't qualify for any benefits yet, and they may present to a maternity hospital very late, or with a newborn indeed, and really have nothing. And we have come across quite a number, actually, of cases like that in the past year or two. Other parents might need additional support for equipment and clothes at a later stage. So maybe they got the buggy or the clothes initially, but the buggy breaks, the clothes don't fit anymore. They need different things as their baby gets a bit older. They might need a high chair when the baby gets to 6 months. So we can support with those things as well. And still others, as I said, don't qualify for any state supports. But, you know, there are people who are the working poor, I suppose you could say, and due to the high costs of rent and living expenses, it's just a financial burden that they're just not in a position to bear, and they just need a bit of a dig out. And we support all of those kind of situations. So we see ourselves really as giving families one less thing to worry about. We can't be all things to all people, but we can ease the anxiety of providing financially for a new baby, which, as we all know, is quite costly. And we do also provide hope in sometimes very difficult situations. So, as some mothers have told us, I didn't know where to turn. You have taken the pressure off. And even, you were there when I had no one. Many of the mothers we help tell us they would love to pay it forward, and when they get back on their feet themselves, they then donate the items back to us to help someone else, which we think is absolutely lovely and a real testament to the value of what we do. So I'll give you a couple of examples just of families we helped in the last few months. So we had a pregnant 21-year-old who just moved out of home and needed help to prepare for her baby's arrival. So we helped her with her hospital bag items, baby clothes, blankets and nappies, and all the essentials she needed to get started on her own as a single mother. There was a mother who was pregnant on her 5th baby and had recently moved out of homelessness. And she asked us for help for clothes and baby items for her youngest children and her new baby. So she would have had a number of small children. And we find that sometimes we can provide clothes for 2 or even 3 small children in a family where they're close together in age. On request from one of the major maternity hospitals, we helped a family who had recently arrived into Ireland with a brand new baby and no income at all. The lady's public health nurse then later contacted us to say that the mother didn't even have a packet of nappies to put onto her new baby. And so we helped with nappies and essentials, clothes and a buggy, and we actually met the public health nurse at the lady's house on that occasion to hand over those items because that mother was in a really difficult position. We also helped a lady expecting triplets to source a special buggy for 3 babies, which is not an easy thing to come by, let me tell you, and certainly costs a lot more than you might imagine, as well as small-sized clothes and essential things for her little small babies. And then also another one which, got to me as well was there was a young mum who was pregnant and was in awful pain and really needed a pregnancy pillow to help her sleep, and she literally couldn't afford the €70 for the pillow. So we gave her something as simple as a pregnancy pillow, and that made a massive difference to that young girl's pregnancy and her ability to cope. So now I suppose that's just a smattering of the type of people we help every single week. But I want to read you a few quotes now, if you'll bear with me, just to show you the actual impact and the value of the work we do as well. So there's a quote here that this is from an advocacy officer with Crosscare, who we've a very strong relationship with in Dublin. And as you might know, Crosscare have a big hub up in Clonliffe for homeless families, and they also support homeless families right across Dublin and families in difficult situations. So the quote from the advocacy officer reads, "Our service deals with the most marginal and vulnerable. To be able to access support from Community Connect has allowed us to source timely, valuable and extremely important support for these households who would otherwise have really struggled. It is a fantastic, empathetic and extremely useful service, and we and our clients really appreciate it." Then from a key worker in Focus Ireland said to us, "Community Connect have been a vital support for so many of the families we work with. Thank you so much." And then a social worker in one of the major maternity hospitals said, "Thanks as always, we really appreciate all you do for our patients." And we have any amount of nice quotes like that. And of course we get lovely quotes from the mothers that we help as well. And so for those who were in the workshop, you've just heard these, but I'm going to repeat them because I think they just tell a story by themselves. So one mother who was pregnant said, "I'm so delighted to receive the baby clothes, buggy, Moses basket and all. Thanks to Community Connect for putting a smile on my face and for making me look forward to have my baby. I really appreciate your help." And to me, that just says it all. To help someone to look forward to having their baby, that's why we're here. And then another mother in Galway said, "Thank you to your family for taking time out of your day to deliver. The children were so excited to unpack everything for their new little baby sibling. I really appreciate it." And we get loads of quotes like that all the time. I could stand here all day reading them, but it just shows the value of seemingly small deliveries can have to someone's life. So now I just want to give a very big shout out now to all of our fabulous volunteers, many of whom are here in this room, and I can see you all around. Because without our volunteers, we couldn't do anything. We couldn't do any of the work we do. They contribute their time and effort so selflessly right across the country. Every week, some of them are with us every single week, and they do it selflessly to help those who are less well off than themselves. And as I said, many of them are here, and I just want to thank you all very, very sincerely and very much from the heart. And I would love to encourage any of you who haven't volunteered with us yet to please sign up. We are delighted to get new volunteers. We are always in need of more volunteers all across the country in all of our hubs. And we welcome volunteers from all abilities and backgrounds, all ages. There's always something that you can do, even if you're not able to lift buggies and fix flat wheels in the hub. You might be able to do some knitting. You might be able to sort some clothes. You might be able to pop in one Saturday a month, one Saturday every 6 months. Every little bit helps us quite a lot. So our hubs are Dublin, Cork, Galway, Limerick, Athlone, Kilkenny, and then we have smaller groups in different places around the country: Portlaoise, Donegal, Wexford, West Cork, West Clare, and I'm probably forgetting someone, but that's the ones that are on the top of my head. So we're always glad of new volunteers. You can help at the hub with things like sorting and packing the clothes, cleaning the baby equipment, all of that kind of thing, and also just collecting donations for us. So we have lots of volunteers who do that, collect donations, drop them to the nearest hub maybe once a month. So please do come visit our stand during the day. Come talk to us. There's lots of us here. We'd be delighted to talk to you about how you can get involved, what you can help with, and take your details. And even if you don't think you can volunteer, please sign up to our mailing list and we'll keep you informed about everything we're doing. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time and attention, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks to Elaine, and I'd encourage you to go and visit during the break time just all the stands, and hopefully you might be in a position to get involved with your time or support their work financially today. I'm going to ask the students panel that I know they were thinking they were on with me a little bit later, but one of our speakers is delayed, along with I think a lot of people because it's the rugby match today, so stuck in traffic. So one of the things that I know I find most encouraging, I hope you do too, is the number of students and young students that are involved in Students for Life. And again, through the Future Leaders programme, I've got to meet lots of different students that are studying so many different varied topics and that are passionately pro-life. So it's great to be able to hear from them. We're going to chat today to Tammy, to Luke, to Daniel and to Katie, and just hear a little bit about the work that they have been doing through Students for Life, because hearts and minds are changed on campus through in-person conversations and through connections. And, peer-to-peer communication is the thing that works. A young person speaking to another young person. But I think we really have to offer our support to these young people, because it's not easy to feel like you're in the minority. I mean, we all know what that feels like, but it's even more difficult on campus. And these students are so brave and courageous. And when they make those connections and have those open conversations with people, that's, I think, when hearts and minds are changed. And we've seen that happen in countries like the United States where, the tide is very slowly turning in terms of when they look at the polling of younger people, that for the first time since the 60s, young people are now becoming more pro-life. I think as they see the realities of abortion and the impact abortion has had on their peers. And that's what is changing. So, yes, everyone's behind me now. Ta-da! You just appeared. You should have told me to wish. I was so engrossed. So, maybe it would be nice for you just to introduce yourself to everybody. Tell us what your involvement is with Students for Life, and if you're studying, what you're doing. So, Tammy.
Hello everybody, my name is Tammy. I'm originally from Dublin, but I'm living up in Donegal at the moment, and I'm the Students for Life Outreach Officer.
Great stuff. Daniel?
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm from Galway. I'm studying medicine there. I got involved in pro-life through my family, I guess, and trying to get more active now in my own right. Okay,
we're being directed by the chief whip over here, so you can see us on the screen, I think, is it? Okay, thanks, Father Bill. All right, Luke.
Yeah, I'm Luke, and I'm also from Galway, studying there in NUIG, and I'm studying arts, English and history and creative writing. So it's a pleasure to be with you today.
And I'm Katie. I'm from Cork, and I'm an alumni with many years now, but I'm the coordinator with Students for Life, so I'm delighted to be here today.
Great. Okay, so the first question I wanted to ask you all is, why are you involved, or what was the thing that drove you to be just passionate and involved with the pro-life movement? I'll start with you, Tammy.
Yeah, so for me growing up in my family, we were just like always pro-life. Like it's all I can remember. It was like every summer there'd be the big rallies, and as a kid was like so attractive, so colorful. Great music. I would see my friends. So from the beginning, yeah, it was just normal for me to be pro-life. And then in secondary school, especially the last couple of years of secondary school, I was like, oh, like this isn't normal. Like everyone isn't pro-life, and people had very strong opinions. And I just felt like I needed more formation and to also like to do more. And for my peers especially, like I wanted them to know the truth. And like the only way that they were going to find out the truth was like from me being publicly pro-life and like learning more about what it is to actually be pro-life.
So you have to have the passion, but you have to educate yourself as well. Definitely, to be able to communicate. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm much the same story. It's not very exciting, but yeah, I grew up in a pro-life household and always going along to the events, and there was always great atmosphere there. But I guess, yeah, as you get a bit older and you come into college, you have to really start thinking for yourself a lot. And especially in university, there are so many different perspectives and so many different viewpoints, and everyone is very vocal about a lot of different things. But for me, I guess I just kept coming back to the core beliefs that I had growing up and trying to spread that a little bit among my friends and finding like-minded people as well, which was.
Do you think there's
really
enough
great.
Critical thinking amongst young people today, or is there a lot of just kind of populist going with the flow on some of these issues rather than actually critically thinking?
I think lots of people, I think there is critical thinking, but I think people are a bit shy to kind of have the public discourse on it. So, lots of people behind closed doors have all the thoughts going and the thought processes, but they're a bit shy to, get cancelled, as you might say, and they don't want to be on the wrong side of society. So I think that kind of stops a lot of people from.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt young people like yourself is so encouraging to see, and I think gets the wheels turning for other young people. What about yourself, Luke?
Yeah, I suppose I was always quite passionate about human rights and things like that. I went to a fantastic secondary school in rural Galway where we had fantastic teachers, religion teachers in particular, who really, I think, shared their fundamental belief in the value of every human life and campaigned for the protection of life, be it through, talking about the death penalty or euthanasia or abortion. But as well as that, real kind of normal teachers. They were exciting and passionate and driven about human rights. So I suppose that's kind of where that passion that
So
they had rubbed off
seeds
on
that
me.
are sown, can make a big difference throughout your life. And I think that's important for, there's maybe parents and maybe some grandparents here today that feel like sometimes the little seeds they're trying to sow might be in vain, but they're not. You don't know when they'll take root, but they often do. Katie, what about yourself?
Yeah, actually, growing up, abortion was never discussed in my household, which is kind of hard to believe now because my parents are actually really involved as well. But it just wasn't. But saying that, I suppose human rights were important in standing up for injustices, and I really didn't get involved until 2013. I suppose around the time of the tragic case of Savita and all that. That was going on in the media, and I suppose because of the mistruths that were coming out, that's really what motivated me to get involved, and I'm here since.
You're here ever since. Thank you so much for all of you. Look, it's just so encouraging to see that you're staying strong with your pro-life beliefs in spite of some of the difficulties. Tammy, I wanted to ask you, just in terms of your work as the outreach officer for Students for Life, tell us how you're getting on this year so far. Now, obviously, campuses are back in person, fully fledged again, and have you got events in the pipeline, or what's been going on?
Yeah, so I've been working with Students for Life since August, and it's been really great. And just before I joined back in April, there was a really big student summit down in Cork, and that was just an opportunity for young people and students just to come along. There were workshops, talks, and then just time to hang out and get to know other young people. And it was also just important for them to leave with the current knowledge of what's currently happening on the abortion topic at the moment. And so that had happened, just a couple of months before I joined. But since I've joined, there was the march that happened back in September, and we had lots of students who were volunteering at that. And then afterwards we had a social event, because again, just young people coming together is so important, and then we can kind of go out onto the field and be pro-life and get the message across. So that was another great event that has happened. And yes, now since COVID, there's a lot more opportunities and campuses are back. So we hopefully will be having some Christmas meetups, just hanging out together again, just chatting about a little bit what's happening at the moment with the pro-life topic. And then in February, hopefully we'll have our next student summit. And then I've also been traveling nationally to some of the bigger universities, getting to know students, and there's been some great response, and even just from some campuses that haven't had pro-life groups before, they just really want to get on board, and it's so encouraging to see.
So you feel hopeful then?
Yeah, definitely.
Which is great to hear, Tommy. Yeah. Luke, I wanted to ask you just a little bit about your experience in NUIG, and I know you've been involved with Students for Life for a few years now. What areas do you find encouraging, and what are the areas that you would encourage others to get involved in at the moment?
Definitely, I think one of the biggest areas where we're thriving is in the area of social media. So Students for Life Ireland would have Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and I'm sure many people here today are familiar with our Facebook account in particular, and just the sort of personal stories that people are sharing, and the posts that are going up. It is having a huge impact. I'm also very encouraged to see so many people getting involved in politics and getting politically active, because I think that's where the main battleground is going forward. And as well as that, I think some of the campaigns we have in college, so one of them would have been around creche fees, childcare fees, that they were trying to increase them in NUI Galway, and the Pro-Life Student Society there launched a big campaign against it. So we were active in the media and stuff like that, and I think a lot of people, our campaign resonated with them, and even people who mightn't agree with us on the issue of abortion were very open to us and open to hearing our arguments on abortion as a result of the common ground we built on that.
Yeah, which is a really important point. When you find that common ground, it can open the doors to communication, and also doing the practical, saying, we're pro-life, but we're trying to find solutions. So it's really encouraging to hear that. Daniel, I wanted to ask you, just obviously as a medical student, how do you find that? Because obviously I would imagine there is, pressure to have a particular opinion on abortion when you're studying medicine. Is it posing challenges for you and others that you're studying with?
Yeah, I think there are probably more challenges now to even 10 years ago, kind of before the legislation came in. But I think at its core, there's still, really good education for the ethical background of freedom of conscience and the legal framework surrounding that as well, and kind of looking at international, what's going on in other countries. So I think that's really, really hopeful and supportive. And I think, to be fair to you know, at least at NUIG, and I'm not sure about the other medical universities, but there's definitely space for healthy discussion. You know, I think they're saying, you know, this might happen later on, but what do you think about it? And they're allowing discussion among students. But at the same time, you know, you do see it creeping into exams. So for some people, you know, you have to learn about abortion pills, about surgical abortions, and if that's come up in an exam, that can be really uncomfortable feeling, and it can make you feel very guilty. And for some people, that might mean failing the exam and all the stress that comes with that as well. And of course, like I mentioned, being in university, you're going to have lots of different opinions. I have lots of friends that are pro-choice, and some of the lecturers are pro-choice as well, but equally there are lots of people that are pro-life, and there's a great community there. Bringing it back to the freedom of conscience, I do think, though, that it's really important that even outside the medical sphere, people are very vocal on this. I think perhaps the public has limited understanding of what it means to be a doctor, and how freedom of conscience can be such a, you know, a human right as a doctor, but in Ireland it's not really coming through at the moment.
Do you think people aren't connecting the dots in terms of who would want to go to a doctor that doesn't follow their conscience or doesn't follow their, you know, their medical judgment on any particular issue? But on this, people don't seem to be joining the dots. But I suppose it's up to young, upcoming medics to make sure that you fight for freedom of conscience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's up to young medics, but the public as well, to be very vocal and informed on this issue, because I suppose at the end of the day, you know, medicine shouldn't be used as a tool by the state. And we just had an excellent workshop with Dr. Brendan about this issue, and I think there's good change coming in the future to reinforce freedom of conscience for doctors.
So from people that are here, what is the message? It's to make sure that we talk to our politicians and our political representatives saying freedom of conscience is important to protect.
100%, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It's great, isn't it, just to know that there is young students across just a diverse range of subjects, but it's great, it's encouraging as well just to have a medical student, and I know there's others who are pro-life. Katie, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more just about some of the other Students for Life initiatives that are happening.
Yeah, so obviously over the last 2 years our online activity had to increase massively, and we were delighted to host a series of online videos and a webinar with Autumn Lindsay from Students for Life of America. We also did an online fundraiser for The Perfect Gift. They're a charity who support parents whose babies get a diagnosis of Down syndrome. It was a shaving. Some people here might have shaved their heads for it. And then we also ran a survey to see what type of supports there is on campus for pregnant mums and student parents, because that's something we feel very passionately about, and it's something we hope to build on to try, and I suppose it's kind of building the bridge to get, if they want to continue the education, that we can help them do that. And just in September, UCD invited Students for Life to take part in a debate on campus there. In the next few weeks, you yourself are travelling down to Maynooth to do a workshop with some of the pro-life students there. So there's lots of promising things taking place. In the new year, we will have a few fundraisers. We always do the Special Olympics Collection Day. And as Tammy mentioned, we'll have our Student Summit again in February. And I think something we all have to remember is we have a lot of common ground with people who may not be pro-life per se on paper, but there's such an opportunity on campus for students to build bridges and to connect with students on issues that aren't overtly pro-life, and that's something that the students...
The practical support seems to be common ground.
The creche fees, the parent supports, etc. And coming to the events like the Student Summit, you get an opportunity to build your confidence, to be literate in those, to then go out into the campuses and build friendships, a community, and ultimately try and change hearts and minds.
Yeah, it's incredible what's going on. I think if we took a little snapshot now and you said to people, if you went on to comments and said, what do you think these students are talking about today? Probably the last thing they would think of is, these guys are all pro-life. And that in itself is powerful, that we're challenging the misconceptions and that there's young, passionate pro-life people, you know, that are just wanting to, in a loving way, share the message, but also doing the practical. So where do you guys see the pro-life movement on campus going in the next 5 years? What is the future? What does it hold?
Well, I do think that we need to get politically active, as I said. I think that's kind of the main battleground now for the issue. It is the politicians that make the laws, and it is us, the electorate, that make the politicians. But I do have cause for hope for the future. You know, I mean, as you say, even just the image of pro-life students, and there are, you know, hundreds of us right across the country. And we're all going into professions like, you know, I'm studying writing, Daniel is studying medicine. I think we need to hold firm within those professions and not be shy or not be afraid to articulate our beliefs and viewpoints. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and be courageous about it, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with Luke there. Really finding community among students. I think in the next 5 or 10 years, I do think we'll see more activity among pro-life students in university, and that's coming through kind of from the States, from, you know, post Roe v. Wade, and you'll just see more engagement. I think there will be a lot happening over the next few years, and I think we'll see lots of the societies that might have dwindling membership at the moment being reinvigorated. And
being encouraged, which is great. And just to say to people, whether you're a student yourself here today or you know students in college, that let them know about Students for Life, because I know my experience over the years, particularly during the referendum, students would come to me and were quietly pro-life, nervously pro-life, but if they can connect up with and reach out to Students for Life on campus, or even students you might know that aren't, but just want to hash out the issues, and knowing that these people involved with Students for Life that are articulate and able to have these conversations in the right way, so direct people towards them. I'm sure you'll join me in just thanking Tammy and Daniel and Luke and Katie for chatting to us today, for all that they're doing, and for encouraging the old mammies like me and the young mammies like Katie as well in our pro-life endeavour. So thank you all just for chatting to us today. We really appreciate it. Big clap. Thanks, guys. And of course, just make sure again during the break that you go to the Students for Life stand, talk to them, find out a little bit more about them. Now, I'm not sure if we're breaking for lunch or we're taking another. Yes. Okay, great. So our next speaker, many of you will know. You might have been listening to her on Spirit Radio as you were driving in here this morning, but married to a wonderful Irishman, but originally from the United States herself. And her family are so involved and so proactive in the pro-life movement. I'm always just floored with the energy and time that she makes for pro-life involvement. But she's going to talk to us a little bit today just about what's been happening in the United States. Obviously, we know with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, because she herself is American, and to just give us a little bit of an update on that. So give a big round of applause for Jackie Asco. We also have to give a big congratulations to Jackie, because you won't believe it by looking at her beautiful, youthful face, but she's become a granny for the second time in recent weeks, so congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an exciting time of life, I have to say. We have 7 children, and our eldest just had her second baby, Katie. Some of you may know Katie, bear it short now, but Katie Asco. And it's been an amazing month since the baby's come. And that's what we're here to celebrate today, isn't it? Babies and new life. And I think everybody would join in my excitement that on the 24th of June this year, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. That horrible 1973 court decision which legalized abortion across America. And it really was truly an amazing day and a turn of events. I'll always remember where I was when I heard the news. I was in Tesco, in the middle of Tesco, and my phone started dinging, and I'm going, what? And I got so excited, but I couldn't get too excited because I was in Tesco. You know, nobody would have understood. But honestly, I think it's a day that most of us believed would never have arrived in our lifetime. Would you agree with me? Yeah, I didn't think I'd see the day, that's for sure. But it's wonderful. And against all odds, that day has arrived. And 5 months on since the court's decision, we should still be celebrating and giving thanks for the people who worked unceasingly for that day. There were so many. Give them a clap. They deserve it. There were volunteers who never gave up hope, even when they suffered setback after setback. Some of them were jailed. They were ridiculed. They were attacked for their stance. And they stayed the course. Thank God for people like that. We owe so much to these bold and courageous pro-life volunteers those who are still alive, and sadly those who have departed who didn't get to see that day while living here on earth. But, you know, they refused to stay silent, and that was the thing, wasn't it? They never gave up the fight for life, and they are the real heroes who defeated Roe v. Wade. Since that infamous 1973 Supreme Court ruling, I'm sad to say that there have been over 60 million legal abortions performed in the U.S. 60 million unborn babies whose lives ended before they had the opportunity to breathe the air or see the light of a single American day. 60,000 lives lost, and the lives of countless women irreparably damaged from the emotional and psychological trauma of their abortions. But now, thankfully, for the first time in almost 50 years, it's possible once again to legally protect unborn babies in the United States. And what an amazing outcome. Can you believe my phone's ringing? It's my mom. Gosh, I hate to do this to my mom. That's terrible. I had it turned off, too. But my phone is set to always ring when my mom calls. I'm a good kid. Sorry about that. Now, according to the pro-abortion linked group We Count, there are more than 10,000 fewer abortions carried out in the U.S. in the 2 months immediately following the overturn of Roe. And also, according to the group We Count, they recorded the dramatic decrease in abortions in states that have introduced bans or restrictions on abortion, and they documented the increase in abortions in states like Minnesota and Illinois, where women from neighboring states appear to be traveling to access abortions. And you can trust those numbers because they're from the pro-abortion side. So those are real numbers. Those are their data. But taking everything into account from the figures compiled, it's estimated that 10,570 fewer abortions took place in the U.S. on a whole between July and August than would typically occur year on year in that same 2 months. So that's a win. Pro-life groups in the U.S. have also drawn attention to the sharp drop in abortions that occurred in states that outlawed or restricted abortion following the Dobbs ruling in June. It's incredible to think. I mean, think about this for just a minute. I mean, these are numbers, but these numbers represent human souls. There are 10,570 babies alive today in the U.S. that would otherwise be dead if the Supreme Court had not issued its ruling. It's a reminder, it's a stark reminder of the life-saving impact of having pro-life laws. Ireland, of course, also proved this point prior to repeal, and now the same thing's happening in the U.S. We can see these laws make a difference to saving lives. And it's why we have to keep pushing for those incremental changes in Ireland and insisting that positive alternatives to abortion are prioritized instead of the relentless promotion of abortion that's currently taking place. Now, we all know that everything's not going to just fall into place overnight in the U.S. just because Roe v. Wade has been overturned. It'll take time. The pro-life movement in the U.S. is acutely aware of this. But some good news, the midterm elections in the U.S. just earlier this week, they happened on Tuesday. It was a good case in point. It's estimated that pro-abortion donors forked out over $500 million, not million, billion to air TV ads attacking pro-life candidates in the run up to Tuesday's election. And it does show how desperate and frightened the pro-abortion side are of pro-life gains happening at the state level throughout the U.S. The lies, the misrepresentations, and the vicious media attacks on pro-life movement in the U.S. over the past 5 months have been very difficult to watch. As a former American, I've found it really, really hard, and as has the more than 100 attacks on pro-life centers, including the 17 attacks so far that involve the firebombing of pro-life centers. It's just appalling. And then I'm sure you heard about an elderly lady. She was shot when canvassing door-to-door in Michigan last month. And there have been many other physical attacks and death threats against pro-life individuals, including, of course, the assassination attempt on the life of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh in May. Now, given all that's happened, and that's a lot of negative stuff, isn't it? It's a lot of bad stuff. And it's remarkable how positive and how upbeat the pro-life movement in the U.S. remains. One point you probably won't see reported on in the media here or there, in the midterm elections earlier this week, it was the pro-life candidates who performed best, were the candidate who did not hide their pro-life views, but who were vocal in the defense of life and who proclaimed their pro-life principles and who exposed their opponents' extremism on abortion that did so well. They did really well in the midterms. And this was shown to be the case in state after state, states like Florida and Ohio and Arizona. So that was really encouraging. And in states like Pennsylvania, however, where the candidates who were opposed to abortion kind of shied away from the issue, just hoping it would go away, well, they lost, and they lost big time, and they were unable to overcome the impact of the misleading abortion attack ads that were aired night after night on local TV to stop them from winning. It's going to take time to set things right, but the momentous decision in June of the U.S. Supreme Court is going to continue to energize the pro-life movement in the U.S., leading a lot of positive changes, and most importantly of all, to fewer and fewer abortions. We should take great encouragement here in Ireland from what has happened against all odds in the U.S. It's a truly incredible story, and one that we most definitely should be celebrating 5 months on from today when we heard Roe v. Wade, no more. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you so much, Jackie. And look, I hope that gives you encouragement for just, we got to keep battling on, because you see the difference that it has made for Americans, who just didn't give up. We're going to be taking a short break very shortly. I'm going to play in a minute a video from the March for Life, which was brilliant, and it was great that so many young people in particular attended. Thanks to David Conroy, who made this wonderful video. And just during the break, it'll be about 20-25 minutes, obviously get yourself some refreshments, but please do visit all the stands. There's lots of pro-life t-shirts and merchandise and things like that you might want to get for people in your life that couldn't make it here today. And also, you might be able to support some of the work that's going on, because we can't plan ahead and we can't keep doing what we're doing without people being generous and supporting our work. So let's play out with this video from the March for Life, and I'll see you after your lunch, okay? Thank you.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen, our program will be recommencing in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, our program will be recommencing. Can you please take your seats for the recommencement of the program? Thank you.
We are going to recommence the conference in about 2 to 3 minutes, so if you want to start making your way back into the auditorium, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you please retake your seats? Our program will be commencing momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, we are recommencing our program now. Please take your seats.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a lovely break and you got to meet people and chat to people during your break and you feel refreshed and energetic. Sheila Quinlan is with me on the stage. I'm sure many of you have talked to her on the phone or seen her hosting the webinars. She always does a fantastic job. Thank you, Sheila, for all you do. And we're going to be commencing with our speaker shortly, but Sheila just wanted to tell you a little bit about the online auction, which is live. Thanks, Sheila.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and thank you all so much for being here today. It's so nice to see so many friendly faces that I recognise. Obviously, fundraising is a very important part of the work that we need to do. Without fundraising and without your support, we cannot continue to do the work that we do. So thank you so much to all of you who do regularly fundraise. We have a really exciting and fun activity that we're running at the moment, a fundraising activity, which is our auction, our pro-life campaign annual auction, which is online, and I really encourage you all to come on and to check out the auction. It actually ends, it started a few days ago, it started on the 8th and it's running until the 18th of November and it's going to end at 9 p.m. sharp. And it's just a great bit of fun, great way for us to fundraise, and hopefully you'll find something nice that you can bid on. We have lovely art, we have jewellery, we have a lovely weekend break in the west of Ireland, in Westport. So lots of really nice items to bid on, and at the same time you then get to support the work that we do. We also have a fantastic raffle with a number of excellent prizes. So I'd encourage you, even if it's a case that you don't want to bid on an item, you can certainly buy a raffle ticket. You should all already have heard about this with our email, and there's a link on there, but it's prolifecampaign.ie/PLC auction 2022. So I'd really encourage you just to take a few minutes, maybe over the next day or two, to go on and to bid. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, Sheila. So we've heard a good bit today from different speakers, and it was one of the key things that in the Students for Life discussion, if you saw that, was talking about political activism, being involved in politics or connected to political parties that speak up for the right to life. So it's great to have with us today the Aontú leader, Peadar Tóibín. And it's quite extraordinary what Aontú have achieved in such a short period of time. In that, in the latest opinion poll, they're polling at 4%, which is actually more than the Green Party, who are obviously currently in coalition, and Labour as well. So it's commendable to see the appetite for a party that stands up for the right to life, and of course many other important issues, but just to see how that party has grown. And also for us as pro-life people to just have a political representative that in the Dáil is courageous and has the qualities that I wish more politicians had in terms of integrity and backbone. So it's great to have with us today. And you know, we need these qualities across the board for all the issues that are important. Patrick Tabine, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Míle maith go léir as an currabh an seo. Bhí mé chun rá tá an áthas orm an curran seo a ghlacha ach níl. Ní fós. Míle buíochas a gachtainna a agrigh an ócáid inniu agus go háirithe leis an pro-life campaign. Tá siad ag déanamh annacuid obair thar timpeall na tíre ag míle buíochas faoi sin. I want to thank all the organisers of today's event, especially the pro-life campaign, who have done such enormous work year after year in relation to this human rights campaign. And a lot of the work that they do is behind the scenes and in the background, and many people don't see it. But it is vital work in relation to making sure that human rights still has a voice and a place in the political spectrum today. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do here today is to make a pitch for people to become active. And that's going to be the theme of my address today. And the background to this is very, very simple. Over the last 4 years, 25,000 children, north and south, have lost their lives to abortion because of the legislation that has been brought into the north of Ireland. That's an incredible figure in any walk of life. And if you look at it, it equates to roughly 1,000 classrooms of children whose lives have been ended as a result of the laws that have been passed. And again, if you want to quantify it, it's exactly the same number as children go to 62 schools, primary schools in this country, whose lives have been taken. And again, to put that in perspective, roughly the average county has about 120 schools, primary schools in them in this country. So half the average school, primary school numbers have had their lives taken away from them by the legislation that has been imposed upon the country north and south over the last while. It's similar to the populations of towns such as Ennis, such as Carlow, or such as Tralee. And if that happens in our lifetime, it would be the most important news that would be affecting everybody's lives. It is a human catastrophe for all of us, but it's also an individual catastrophe for each of those lives. Because sometimes when we talk in numbers as large as that, we don't see the humanity in that. But for each of those individual human beings, it's the end of the world for them. For each of those individual human beings. And, you know, it's right now we're at a situation that it could possibly get worse. And the only thing that can stop it getting worse is if we, the people, push back at what's happening in this country. And that's very, very important. It doesn't have to be this way, and we are the catalyst to which direction it goes in the future. Now, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens are currently delivering the results of the 3-year review that was part of the legislation that was brought about in 2018-2019. And in that review, they have done a number of things. So first of all, Stephen Donnelly, the Minister for Health, has only actually met with pro-abortion campaigners in discussing what this review should cover. He met with no pro-life campaigner or nobody representing the pro-life movement in the process of developing this particular review. That's an incredible thing. Also, he appointed the chair of the review instead of what he had promised to publicly tender for a person for that particular job. And there's a big threat in this review that we were promised when the referendum happened that this would be the legislation, that it would not change. But 3 years later, they're already looking to change a number of elements of this legislation. So, for example, there's a big push to change the 3-day wait period for a person to make a decision over the enormity of whether or not to proceed with an abortion. And we know from parliamentary questions that I've put in and that Carol Nolan has put in that many, many people, after going to the first abortion appointment, don't go to the second abortion appointment. That the 3-day wait period actually, in the space of 2 years, saved over 800 lives in this country. And it's very, very, very important that that remains there. We also have a situation where they're looking to normalise the taking of abortion pills at home. Now, if you remember the referendum, most people who were campaigning for it said we have to legalise it because women were taking abortion pills at home, and that was a threat to their lives. And as soon as the legislation came in, they said that, yes, women could take abortion pills at home. And that's happening now at the moment, even though we know in Britain that that leads to a large number of human emergencies. It's a threat to the health of the mother to allow it to proceed with that. And we also have people who are looking to allow for abortion to be made legalised for in late-term situations for children who have severe disabilities as well. Now, I would say that the Irish people, and most particularly women and unborn babies, deserve better than this. And we in Aontú seek to build a society based on compassion, empathy, kindness, where the most vulnerable are the most protected. We seek to support mothers economically and socially so that they have the confidence to be able to raise their children to the full potential. And we seek to protect children with disabilities, children from low-income families, and baby girls, because these are the people who are most discriminated against when it comes to abortion. And our support for these people is not just up until the day that they're born. We will support these mothers and their children for their whole lives, so that they can be confident in raising their children for their whole lives as well. Now, the key message that I want to give to you here today is there is only one place where this can be stopped, and that is in the Dáil. There's only one place where this can be changed, and that is in the Dáil. This human disaster will grow in its enormity unless we have more pro-life TDs in Leinster House who are willing to change the law. There's no magic to it. There's no mystery to it. The battle is in Leinster House. Now, this is where the location of the battle is. Surely that logic dictates that our collective activities should be focused on getting more pro-life TDs into the Dáil. If each one of us recognises that abortion is one of the greatest human rights injustices, and the only way that it can be fixed, surely every day we need to be looking at how do we get more pro-life TDs into Leinster House. Now, I'm often asked by people, how did abortion come into this country so quickly? And there's a number of contributing factors to how that happened. But the main engine of change was that pro-abortion campaigners became more politically active. Pro-abortion campaigners joined more political parties. Abortion campaigners became more politically strategic. Now, I have often asked people to help us to join pushback in this politically. And sometimes I get the answer, I'm 100% pro-life, but you know, I'm not actually political. Now, for me, the human right to life is the most important political issue of our time. You know, the people who have most to gain out of taking abortion out of the political sphere are actually the pro-abortion campaigners. These are the people who filled our media with their material before the referendum, and now they want it to become politically invisible. But I would attend RT studios not far from here, or radio studios across the country, and oftentimes a presenter might say, but abortion isn't a political issue anymore. Who decides that? Is it the presenter that decides that, or is it the people who decide that? It is very much the people, the latter, who decides what's a political issue in this country or not. I would say being pro-life and not being political is similar to trying to run without oxygen. Being pro-life and not being political is like trying to swim without water. Political activism is the only tool that we have to change the laws in this country. And it's not rocket science either. There's a very simple formula for this. Membership plus activism equals more political representatives. Think about that. Membership plus activism equals more political representatives. That gives you more platforms on which you have an opportunity to persuade people of the value of human life. And it gives you more votes during key pro-life legislation that's happening in our country. So if we know that that equation is the equation to success, we need to orientate ourselves. We need to think very seriously about how do we get into that situation where we have more people involved. Now, Homer Simpson once ran for mayor of Springfield, and he ran on the slogan, "Why can't somebody else do it?" Okay? Now, if we're honest, a lot of us might have had this approach to political activism ourselves in the past. But by God, the day is gone where we have the luxury of thinking we can remotely lobby politicians and that they will do the right thing on our behalf. They will not do the right thing on our behalf, and we can see that 100%. Just in the last couple of weeks, Anne Rabbitte and Jack Chambers, people who said that they supported the rights to life, were looking ahead to a cabinet reshuffle, and they wanted to position themselves for ministerial office. So how did they do that? They flipped on the right to life. They followed the well-worn path by TDs and MLAs from political parties and changed their views to suit the needs of the leadership in those political parties. How can an elected representative go from one day in saying that the human right to life is the most important human right that exists, that every unborn child is an individual living human being, to then the next day saying they support abortion for whatever reason up till any age at all? It is impossible to travel that journey overnight if you never held the attitudes in the first place. And that's one of the problems I believe that's wrong with the political establishment at the moment. If you can't trust a politician on this issue, on the issue of 25,000 unborn children, what in God's name can you trust them with at all in the end of the day? I want to give you a little example of how this works in some of the political parties currently at the moment. And the example that I'll use is the SDLP. So in the SDLP, the membership, who are very strongly pro-life, voted at their Ordesh that they would have policies to support the rights to life. But the leadership brought in a freedom of conscience motion, which gave them the ability to ignore the views of their membership. And what they did then was they used every political platform that they had to push for more abortion on demand. And if you look at the SDLP leadership right now, they're literally campaigning for the provision of abortion services across the north. And what happens then is that you have this middle management in those political parties, and they see which way the wind is blowing at the top of their parties, and they're ambitious and they're hungry for success, so they flip as well. And the dangerous thing is the many decent representatives who are pro-life, they suddenly start to lose their voices. They suddenly started, if there's a vote in Stormont, yes, they'll vote the right way. If someone asks them at the door, where do you stand? They'll say, yes, I support for the right to life. But they're no longer campaigning. They're no longer pushing and changing for that. So they are no longer engines for change. Those engines have been switched off by the mechanisms within their political party. And if we're honest, what's happened in the SDLP has happened in a large number of political parties in Ireland as well. Today, the Irish Times has a report on the abortion review, and they mentioned the fact, which I think is incredibly interesting, 21 government TDs voted against having the abortion referendum at all, okay? Now, they contacted each one of those TDs to ask them what were their views on this review. Not one of those TDs responded whatsoever. They are switched off in terms of being engines for change. We don't want switched off people in Leinster House. We don't want people who are sitting on the fence, who have been neutralised in terms of the greatest human rights debate of our time. We want activists who are actively pursuing and changing the country that we're living in. Now, I want to say that sometimes people say, well, politics is not for me, and for sure being a TD is not for everybody. But every pro-lifer has their own part to play. No part is too great or too small. No one is too old or too young to support the political change that is necessary in this country. Now, I want to ask you very quickly, to imagine that we have a weighing scales in front of us. On one side of that weighing scale, we have the shocking and heartbreaking enormity of 25,000 lives being destroyed, okay? On the other side now, I want to ask you, will you help to change that law? Now, if you say that you're too busy, and some people are very busy for sure, I will ask you, does that change the weighing scales whatsoever? Does it tip the balance in our favor? No, it doesn't. If the answer is, I'm too busy, it does not change the balance of the weighing scales. If the answer is, I don't know anything about politics, well, you're in luck, because we know plenty of people who do, who can help you to get to know what is the bread and butter issues, what are the structures that are necessary, what kind of campaigning achieves success. If your answer is despondency, if you have your head down because of what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years, you do not have the luxury of being paralyzed by pessimism. No life will be saved by any one person giving up, and that's an important message to give out to the people today. If your answer is, well, I have different opinions from the political party, well, then you're in good company as well, because there's not one member of any political party in this country that actually agrees on every single policy of that party. But what is necessary is for people to gather around life and death principles and issues and be able to work on the really important things and have tolerance for the other issues as well. Now, the picture that I have presented may have a lot of darkness in that picture for sure, but there is light emerging from the gloom. There's phenomenal work being carried out by the PLC here, and that is offering light to many people in the country. There is the reversal of Roe, and that shows you that nothing is impossible in this world in terms of this as well. There are many strong independents who are standing up for the right to life around this country and using that platform energetically to argue for human rights. These are good people, and I would urge you to support these people. And of course, here today, I'm talking as well as an Aontú representative. Aontú is 3 years old, but in that time, we have built a vibrant political movement in every county in the country. We've gained over 55,000 votes just in the last elections. We have 1,300 members who have joined our political organisation. We have 6 elected representatives from Wexford to Derry, and we have now 50 local area representatives working in towns and villages across the country. And as was said there a few seconds ago, we're polling at about 40%, or 4%. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Someday I'll be back in front of you with that sentence, I guarantee you that. But 4% is a phenomenal result in just 3 years. It's ahead of the Greens, it's ahead of the Labour Party. Look at the oceans of media afforded to those organisations and compare that to the drop that we in Aontú get, and we're still managing to get better resonance amongst Irish people than those organisations. The other points that I just want to say to people is that we are taking votes out of every ballot box in the country now. And that's a really important issue. Because the people in the smoky back rooms, the strategy rooms of all the political parties, when they know that their votes are threatened in every ballot box in the country, they know they have to change something. And I have heard from people from some of the head offices of some of the political parties now who are getting phone calls from supporters and representatives and even councillors to say, listen guys, put the brake on the abortion talk. Right now we're in danger of losing seats here to Aontú in our county. You need to stop the direction of travel that you're going on and start to listen to the people as well. Imagine what more we could do if we had you. And that's a really important question here today. I have no doubt that we could double the activism, the reach, and the impact that we're having if we can double the number of people who are members of our organisation. So before I leave you here today, again, I want to thank everybody for all the work that they have done. But my key message is we cannot stand idly by. The enormity of this human crisis demands that all of us become politically active to change the laws and the hearts of this country. Martin Luther King said, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and the cruelty of bad people, but the silence over that by good people. The only thing necessary for the triumph of wrong is that good people do nothing. This is not just a snappy quote. It's a reality staring each one of us in the face today. Gur míle maith go bhfuil go léir.
Thank you, Father. So our next speaker is going to be talking about fair representation in the media. And before I welcome her up, I want to share with you a story, and I hope it's one that you're going to share over the next week. When the X case broke in 1992, some of you may remember, it sparked a months-long media frenzy in Ireland, all with the intent of opening the door to abortion and securing the right for minors to access abortion. You might remember the infamous Mary Turner cartoon in the Irish Times at the time. And it featured a map of Ireland surrounded by barbed wire with a girl standing in the middle next to the words, "The introduction of internment for Ireland for 14-year-old girls." Day and night, the media bombarded the public with reports demanding the introduction of abortion. Contrast that with the story that probably some of you haven't heard of. Because when the news broke in late October that a minor in Ireland was recently locked in a room and forced to take abortion pills, it was met with no cartoons emblazoned across the front page of the Irish Times, or indeed the front page of any newspaper. There was no wall-to-wall media coverage for this girl. Aside from a small mention in the Irish Examiner, there was a stunned silence about this truly horrifying case. As a journalist myself, I cannot understand why the media would bury this particular story. But this refusal is happening. It's up to us to shout stories like this from the rooftops about the absolute obscenity of a minor being held prisoner in a room to undergo an abortion. It's actually proof that the tears and the outrage are strictly reserved for stories that have a pro-abortion narrative, whether that's from the media or from the so-called women's groups that are meant to represent us all. But they were not concerned with this young woman's plight. The media and these groups seem more preoccupied with covering and protecting the pro-abortion movement than actually genuinely protecting the welfare of women and vulnerable women from coercive abortion. And we know this is an issue not just from these stories, but from research that has been carried out most recently in the UK by BBC4, where a staggering percentage of women said they were coerced into abortion, backed up by research in the United States by the Guttmacher Pro-Choice Institute. Coercive abortion is a huge issue. Yet authentic journalism has been replaced by zealous campaigning when it comes to this issue. And this story proves it in recent weeks. Because even if you were a staunchly pro-choice journalist, why would you not want to report on this story? That is the question. With this reality of these stories being ignored, that's where you come in. Because we have to educate people. We have to tell the story. Now, if everybody here had gotten in touch, and now that you're aware of this story, with their local radio station, their local media newspaper, with Joe Duffy, whoever it is, to say, have you heard this story and why are you not covering it? We are the ones that have to demand that these stories are given the coverage that they deserve. So I hope that that story will illustrate for you the importance of, Pader talked about political activism, but also we have to be active in connecting with the media as well. And our next speaker is going to talk a little bit about that too. She is Lois Malachi from the Alliance Defending Freedom. That's her job. She's the communications officer with them. They do incredible work around the world fighting for the right to life. And one of the things they're really focused on at the moment is protecting freedom of conscience. She is, I'm sure, working very, very hard to rally against what I've been talking about, fair representation in the media. It's great to have you with us today, Lois McClatchy.
Well, thank you very much for allowing a Scotswoman into your Irish pro-life conference. I was thinking last night about the last time that I was in Dublin, and I think I was about 2 years old, and my dad had actually brought us 3 children, what a challenge, 3 children under 8 on his business trip. And my dad was out there trying to trying to do good things on his business trip. And basically everything was going wrong around him. I lost my Paddington Bear. I would not be consoled with any other Paddington Bear. All 3 of his children, I was 2, don't know what was wrong with the others, wet the bed at different points of the night in the hotel. And it just caused chaos for my dad, who was trying to achieve good work. And it made me think, sometimes in the pro-life movement, do we feel like we're just trying to achieve so much, to do good things, and everything around us sometimes feels like it's going wrong? All the headlines we're reading are just negative, and it just feels discouraging, doesn't it? Sometimes. Well, fortunately, I get to sit in a really privileged position in the pro-life movement. I work for an organization called ADF International, like Wendy said, and I get to oversee a lot of the pro-life stories around the world which are happening, and get to know a lot of the positive news which is coming out around the world. And it's something we don't always hear about, but I wanted to bring that to you today as an encouragement, because as every business book basically around the world says, we tend to overestimate what we can achieve in a day, but we underestimate what we can achieve in a year. And let me tell you about some of the incredible things that the pro-life movement has been doing in just the space of a few years. Because yes, we have a great problem, and we are aware of that great problem that we face, and we should take that very, very seriously, because lives are being thrown away every day, and women are under immense pressure to abort. But I want us to know that we also have a great hope. And I've never seen the pro-life movement mobilized around the world like it is today. In front of all these difficulties, this has really engaged and brought the pro-life movement together to achieve great things. And I think we're kind of achieving on 3 fronts at the moment. I think firstly, we're keeping and pushing and getting that door open to engage hearts and minds on this issue. Secondly, we're finding common ground issues that we can all in society get behind on. Eugenic abortion is one. Coercion is another one that Wendy mentioned. And we're able to push those issues and say to everyone in society, get on board with this good message and save lives together. And thirdly, we are able to protect not only the rights of the most vulnerable, but the right to defend the rights of the most vulnerable, keeping that door open for freedom of conscience. And there's 3 of the things that I want to bring to your attention today. So let's go to number 1, opening that door to win hearts and minds for babies and for women who need our support. Well, we heard earlier, didn't we, about the great news that came through on 24th of June 2022, and we probably all remember where we were at that time that we heard that great news. That was on the front page of the New York Times. Roe v. Wade has been overturned. And let's reflect on that, and let's remember to celebrate that. That took 50 years of commitment from a pro-life movement against all odds in a country that spends £579 million a year exporting abortion around the world. That country said that this issue is not a settled issue. It wasn't a settled issue in the USA, it's not a settled issue in Ireland, and it's not a settled issue around the world, because that conversation is still open. Sometimes when I think about jobs, I forget to celebrate, don't you? Because in Europe, we actually had so much backlash after that, didn't we? We had the European Union in Brussels, and they were voting resolutions to condemn the overthrowing of Roe v. Wade. We had France saying that they wanted to make abortion a constitutional right. And in my country, and I'm sure in yours, we had protesters outside US embassies saying that this is a terrible thing and not realizing that this is a great thing for women and children. And sometimes it feels like we're just up against it in what would have been a great moment. But don't forget, over that summer and until now, our movement has been on television more than it's ever been before. Our movement has been on radio more than it's ever been before. And it's not TV hosts that that we need to persuade. If we're talking to a TV host that disagrees with us, fine, because we are speaking past that host and we are speaking down the lens of a camera to homes and families and women and men and hearts and minds that are open to this conversation much more, perhaps, than they've ever been before. In Europe, we've never really had our own kind of Lila Rose figure, our own celebrity, our own mouthpiece that's been able to carry this message out to the masses. But in the UK and in other places around the world, suddenly we are seeing young influencers who are getting lots of interviews. Dr. Callum Miller, who many of you know I'm a big fan of. We have Eden Linton, who's leading a new youth movement in the UK. And these are great initiatives and great young people who are able to get the pro-life message on their airwaves again. And that's something that should give us a lot of courage and a lot of enthusiasm too. All right, secondly, the next thing I think that our movement is doing particularly well on around the world is finding common ground issues that we can all get behind and rally together to achieve justice and change. Many of you have heard of the young woman Heidi Crowther in the UK. Well, here's something maybe you didn't know. Heidi and I were both babies at the very same time. We were both in the womb in the very same year. But while I had protections after 24 weeks and no one was allowed to take my life, Heidi didn't have the same protections as me. And that's because she has Down syndrome. And in the UK, you can be aborted up to 40 weeks if you have Down syndrome, club foot, even cleft lip. But your life is protected if you do not have a disability. That's an outrageously unequal law, and anyone can see that. You don't need to be in the pro-life movement to see that. That's a eugenicist law. And Heidi has taken that case forward. She's rallied people around the world who are not necessarily in the pro-life movement, but she's brought people together in a common cause that we can all agree on. And whilst we wait for her ruling at the Court of Appeals, we know that she is winning in the court of public opinion, because only last week, another 18-year-old with Down syndrome met with Rishi Sunak in front of the media to give this issue another airing. This is a way that we are able to win hearts and minds and get the attention of the press to this common ground initiative. And it's exciting to see. And this is how... Don't clap me, clap for Heidi. And this is something that's rolling out across the world. Who saw the negative headlines come out of Poland last year? And we saw all these protesters wearing black and being very angry about women's rights. Well, in fact, what really happened in Poland behind the media storm was a great thing, because judges recognized phenomenally that people with disabilities have equal rights to those without disabilities. Isn't that crazy? And that's a phenomenal part of the pro-life movement. And maybe we only saw negative headlines, but according to the Pew Research Center, over 50% of people in Poland think that children before they're born have rights to life. So don't be alarmed by these negative headlines. This is something that is positive and is supporting change. And that movement to protect the most vulnerable and protect those with disabilities has been seen at the other end of life as well when we look at euthanasia laws. In my country, doctors, 175 medical professionals recently published an open letter explaining why this is problematic. And I had thought that was great until I found out that in Ireland you had 2,700 healthcare professionals sign an open letter about protecting the rights of people from euthanasia. That's phenomenal. Well done. Well, what else then is a common ground issue that we can all get behind and rally everyone to support? Well, in Hungary, we've actually seen the Hungarians reduce their abortion rate by half in the last 20 years. Incredible work. They weren't able to change their law, but they did rally around the cause of supporting mothers in pregnancy. And I think that's something that everyone in society can agree on as well. They put in things like tax waivers for families with 4 children, car subsidies for people with children, housing loans, commitments to create 21,000 creche places so that mothers can flourish in the workplace as well as being mothers. And that's great work as well that we can learn from. And what else is common ground? Well, I think the next frontier of our common ground issues should be, as Wendy mentioned, abortion coercion. And Wendy mentioned a very, very tragic case of abortion coercion that occurred here in Ireland as a teenager was locked in a room and forced to take abortion pills. And that is something that should move every heart and mind across Ireland. But let me tell you another story that you might not have heard of, which also happened only within the last few weeks. The European Court of Human Rights, that's the top court in Europe. The European Court of Human Rights issued a ruling on a case called SFK versus Russia, which was about a 20-year-old girl who was pregnant. Her parents put her in a car, didn't tell her where they were going until they were on their way. She found out she was on her way to an abortion appointment to end the life of the baby in her womb. She said she didn't want to do it. She tried to leave the car. Her parents forced her through threat of violence that she had to go through it, and the doctors collaborated on this, and she had to have an abortion. That case went up to the top court in Europe. And let me read the ruling, a little piece of the ruling that came out just the other week. The court observed that a forced abortion undergone in these circumstances was contrary to the applicant's human dignity. It was an egregious form of inhuman treatment, which not only resulted in serious immediate damage to her health, that is the loss of her unborn child, I'm still quoting the European Court of Human Rights, but also entailed long-lasting negative physical and psychological effects. The court recognized that an unborn child had lost its life in this situation and that the rights of that woman were violated and that this had caused detrimental effects on her health. The court has recognized that this is significant. And I think it's time for everybody, all citizens, to recognize that this is significant too. Wendy mentioned BBC polling from 2022 that shows that almost 1 in 5 women in the UK who have abortions are having them against their will. Maybe that's because of societal pressure, pressure in the workplace, pressure from their families and supportive partners. If we can club together and think of ways to help women have other options than abortion, support them to choose life, give them those variety of options and work together to make abortion unnecessary and redundant. That's something that I think we can get everybody involved with. And thirdly, we are succeeding as a movement to protect the rights to defend the most vulnerable. And how can I talk about this without mentioning our own doctor, Dermot Kearney, who's speaking a little bit later today. And I'm sure he'll tell you his own story, so I won't tell it for him. But I think that Dermot's done an incredible job in showing the media and showing the rest of the world that it is good and right for doctors to be finding ways to save lives of children and to support mothers to not be forced down a path, down a choice that they regret or do not want to do. And that's excellent. We're also seeing great success on keeping that door open to defend the rights of the unborn and the rights of women against abortion on university campuses. Julia Rinkiewicz was a client of ADF UK, who I work for, and she was a midwifery student. She believed in the right to life from conception and protecting. You'd think that as a midwifery student that she would, wouldn't you? And she did, and she was a president of her pro-life society. Well, she got caught in action saying pro-life things at her Freshers Week, and she was suspended and would possibly have been expelled from her university because of those views. And we were able to support and challenge Nottingham University of that. And they actually realized that what they had done was wrong, that pro-life views do have a role to play on campus. They shouldn't have shut her out, and they recognized that in letting her back into the university. And that's something that we're seeing across the board as well. It was so encouraging to see students up here earlier talking about their ability to speak out the pro-life message where they're at on campus as well. And isn't it encouraging that all of those students out there are able to share the pro-life message with people who are engaged, interested in listening to new ideas? So that's something to be incredibly encouraged about in our movement as well. And then finally, I want to commend all of you who are going out there and attending rallies and marches for life. Every March for Life that gets reported in the media But only get reported if you get to say that there was thousands in that crowd. And each thousands of people is made up of one person going out and deciding to turn up at the rally, turn up at the march that day. And I think it's incredible that you're having marches and rallies in Ireland out in the towns and the cities where people live and bringing that message to them. We only capture any form of media support for these rallies when people turn up and show up and say that we are here to support the right to life. It only takes one Julia, one Dermot, one Heidi, one person able to speak up and tell their story to be able to gain a voice for the pro-life movement. So, and remember that small victories achieve real change. And when you look at this collection of stories from around the world all together as one, you see that there is great problems, but great hope for the pro-life movement. So one step at a time, we can and will restore a society where both lives matter in a pregnancy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Lo, so much. I'm now pleased to introduce our next speaker who you saw earlier on when we were having our students' panel discussion, Katie Fenton. She is an architect from Youghal in County Cork, a mum of two, and she does amazing work with Students for Life. And she's just shown incredible commitment and a very effective pro-life advocate. But Katie is going to talk to us a little bit today about a very important piece of research that was conducted looking at the My Options helpline. And the research shows that, well, it's anything but in terms of offering options. Katie, thanks so much for coming up and addressing us today.
Thanks, Wendy. Thank you. Wendy mentioned that horrifying story earlier that was reported 2 weeks ago in the Irish Examiner regarding a young woman in Ireland being locked in a room and forced to take abortion pills against her will. As Wendy did say, the Irish Examiner covered the story, but to their shame, the rest of the mainstream media didn't. They ignored it. That story fits in with what I'm going to say now and what I'm going to talk about over the next few minutes. As a movement, we have a duty to keep highlighting stories like this and never back away from the task. The government appears prepared to cover for the pro-abortion side, regardless of how egregious and unspeakable the things happening under the new abortion law are. The government-run HSE My Option service, which was launched in 2019, claims to provide abortion and support for women in unplanned pregnancies, including continued pregnancy support and abortion services. But research carried out earlier this year by us in Students for Life tells a very different story. The research included multiple calls to the My Options helpline, and it contains some very disturbing revelations, including evidence of My Options counsellors advising women to book their first consultation with an abortion provider, even when women seeking help have stated clearly that they remain conflicted about whether to opt for an abortion or not. There's no excuse for taxpayer-funded services to behave in this way. The findings of the research clearly show that My Options counsellors are not equipped to talk to clients about anything other than abortion. Even when clients don't seek information about abortion, abortion is the first issue counsellors raise with them. And just to be clear, we in Students for Life didn't conduct a gotcha-style investigation designed to embarrass or trick these counsellors, nor did we make any exaggerated claims about the findings. We simply published the research, you can find it on our website, studentsforlife.ie, and called on the Minister for Health to take a close look at what was unearthed. Minister Donnelly was made aware of the findings in January, and almost a year later, he has ignored all requests from us and from members of the Oireachtas to comment on the findings or to say what steps he proposes to rectify the situation. There's no question but partisan politics has replaced best practice when it comes to the issue of unplanned pregnancy in general. You only have to look at the groups the Minister for Health has called and has met with when preparing the framework for the 3-year review of the new abortion law. He only met with radical pro-abortion groups and refused to even meet with his parliamentary colleagues from the Oireachtas Life and Dignity group. Based on what has been brought to light about the operation of the government-run My Options hotline, It's essential that people with experience in helping women and providing positive alternatives to abortion are not excluded by the government, as is currently the case, but instead are invited to participate at the heart of the decision-making process. We know it's not going to be easy to achieve this in the current partisan political climate, but it must not dissuade us. We must demand proper representation at the decision-making table. Think of the women we know who experienced an unplanned pregnancy and felt frightened and alone, and then turned to state-backed agencies for support and were instead fast-tracked down the road of abortion. Think of people we know who deeply regret their abortions. Think of a woman who will say all they needed to hear was someone saying, "You can get through this, I'll be there for you," for them to change their mind and keep their baby. The people who have presided over Ireland's spiralling abortion rate in the past 3 years have no competency or understanding of the situations I'm referring to. They follow an approach where all roads lead to abortion. We can't allow the betrayal of women and unborn babies to continue like this. It's actually very disturbing to watch the way the present government promotes abortion and denigrates positive alternatives. Notwithstanding, it's important to remain hopeful that things can improve for the better. Together, we'll continue to expose what's going on and speak up for mums and their unborn babies. Let us think of the young woman who was locked in that room recently and forced to take the abortion pill against her will. Let her story and the story of women like her motivate us to never give up on this fight. Where there is life, there is hope. With abortion, there is no hope. And that's why I remain, and I ask you to, optimistic that the pro-life message will prevail in the end. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Katie. So, we have come to the part of the afternoon where I am delighted to be very shortly introducing our keynote speaker. He is an Irish-born cardiologist working in England. He selflessly and courageously devotes time to helping women who regret taking the abortion pill to undo the effects of the pill before it's too late. He's saved many lives doing this and helped many women who've been suffering at the hands of the abortion culture in the UK. He was recently vindicated by the UK's General Medical Council following a series of complaints made against him by pro-abortion campaigners, so that is great news. He's a pro-life hero, and before he addresses us, we're just going to show you a short video which is just going to illustrate a little bit of what I've already mentioned.
For Amrita, it's hard to imagine life without her baby. But there was a time when she didn't want to go through with the pregnancy.
We had barely any money between us, and yeah, it just wasn't the right time at all. Not even close. Definitely it was never planned for me and him to have a child.
Because Amrita's pregnancy occurred during the pandemic, 2 abortion pills were able to be sent to her in the post after just 1 telephone consultation. How quickly after taking the abortion pill did you regret it?
Instantly after taking the pill, I regretted it. I just cried. I called BPAS and I said to him, "Oh, I regret taking the pill, the first pill," and I was in panic. So I was like, "Is there anything that I can do?" And then she was really calm and she just said, "Oh, that's absolutely fine. A lot of girls do." She said, "If you don't bleed in the next 24 hours, then it should be fine." But I was like, "Okay, I can't leave it to, oh, it might be fine."
Desperate, Amrita found Dr. Carney online. Him and a colleague have prescribed progesterone to 65 women who want to reverse the abortion process.
If she takes mifepristone, changes her mind, and then manages to promptly get progesterone rescue treatment, reversal treatment, we can improve that survival rate of a baby from 20-25% up to 50-55%. Why, if they're so convinced or so determined to have an abortion, why 6 hours later, 24 hours later, 48 hours later, why would they change their mind? And I think the answer to that is because of the inadequacy of any sort of supportive or counselling services. We know from all of the women that I counselled they tell me that nobody spoke to them.
But Dr. Carney's treatment is not endorsed by a number of organisations who declined our interview requests, including the Faculty of Sexual and Reproductive Healthcare, who say they do not support prescribing progesterone in an attempt to stop a medical abortion, and that abortion reversal treatments are not based on scientific evidence. An abortion provider made a complaint to the GMC against Dr. Carney, accusing him of inappropriately prescribing a treatment with no evidence base and imposing his anti-abortion Catholic views on others. After an investigation, he was cleared of all charges. But whatever your views on abortion, this case raises fundamental questions about the support available to women who change their mind during the abortion process. While debates may continue over the efficacy of taking progesterone to stop abortions, for Amrita, there's no doubt over the difference it's made to her life.
It was only a few months after he gave me the pill that he was banned from giving out the pill. So if I were to have fallen pregnant a few months after, I would not be here with her, most likely.
Alice Porter, GB News.
It's great now to welcome up to the stage Dr. Dermot Kearney.
Thank you all very much. 2003, I started working in the NHS in the northeast of England. I'd trained mostly in Ireland, done a couple of years working in Holland, and then took up a post in the NHS. And shortly after that, it never struck me, but just on one occasion, I just noticed in the outpatient department of my hospital, just a notice with a list of procedures, day case procedures that were available in the hospital I was working in. And right at the bottom was termination of pregnancy. And I almost collapsed. I had never, maybe naively, never realised I was going to be working in a country or in an institution where babies' lives were being taken in this way. And I said to myself at that time, again, very naively, I have to do something about this. And I knew I just couldn't go and knock on a door and say, sorry, you have to stop doing these abortions. So I decided in innovative, creative ways that somehow or other I was going to have to at least challenge the culture. I didn't expect that it would end up speaking at the National Pro-Life Campaign conference here today. As is mentioned in the short video, Amrita is one of the girls that I tried to help and successfully helped on this occasion. Many women do change their mind after they've taken the first abortion pill. The majority of abortions, and I'm sure it's the same in this country as in the UK. In the UK, more than 85% of abortions nowadays are carried out by drug-induced processes, and that involves taking two pills. The first pill, mifepristone, which specifically blocks the natural hormone progesterone, which is essential for maintaining pregnancy, and then the second pill to complete the pregnancy they're meant to take 1 or 2 days later, called misoprostol. Now, if a woman changes her mind, as Amrita did, and many others do, and decides not to go ahead with the abortion, she has a few choices. One, she can just do nothing and wait and see what happens, and that's what, for example, if you go to BPAS or Mary Stopes, first of all, they try to persuade you that no, you have to complete the abortion in many of the instances, but they can't force that on the mothers involved. But if they decide not to take the second pill, there's about a 20% chance at best that her baby might survive. If she takes both abortion pills as instructed by the abortion providers, there's a less than 2% chance, it's just over 1% chance that her baby might survive. And those very few who do survive, the vast majority are then surgically aborted shortly afterwards. The treatment that we offer is progesterone, because as I mentioned, mifepristone, that first abortion pill, that blocks the action of progesterone. And while it is devastating and lethal on many occasions, if we can give progesterone promptly to the mother who requests it, we can save the babies in more than 50% of cases. And in the United States, the success rate is up to 65, 68%, but there's a greater awareness in the United States. In fact, in several states, it's mandatory that the abortion providers must inform the mother that if she's getting the abortion pills, that they must inform them that if you change your mind, you are entitled to receive this progesterone treatment. So there's a great awareness in the United States, and the average time for a mother who changes her mind after she's taken that first abortion pill, the average time for her to receive progesterone, if she requests it, is less than 6 hours. In the UK, it's 25 hours. In myself and the work that a great colleague of mine, Dr. Eileen Riley, were doing, the average time from taking that first pill to finding help is 25 hours, because it's a service that is certainly not publicised, is strongly opposed, and people are just not aware of it. In almost all of the cases, almost all the cases, the way that girls like Amrita and others have found us is through internet searches. So they almost always go back to Mary Stopes or BPAS or whatever abortion clinic has given them the pills, and they'll say, I regret what I've done, I've changed my mind, and they're told, sorry, go away, there's nothing you can do. Some are told, oh, go and talk to your GP after the weekend or whatever. Some of them do go to their GPs, and the GPs, by and large, will say, sorry, this is nothing to do with us, you have to go back to Mary Stopes or to BPAS. Then, in desperation, they go on an internet search. And almost all of the women who came to us did so through typing in abortion pill reversal on Google or on the internet. And they, by and large, come up with a helpline, which is American-based in Ohio. And myself and Eileen Riley and there's some doctors in Ireland are registered with that helpline, and then they will try and put the mother in touch with us. And that's how the service operates. So if they can contact us, and if we can get them progesterone quickly, we can save their babies in the UK, and probably the same in Ireland, in 50 to 55% of cases, which is more than double the survival rate that if they didn't get any help. It's not a lot, but it is a start, and I'm sure there are many more mothers who would avail of that service if they knew it was available to them. As was mentioned in the video, and as Wendy mentioned, not everybody was happy with what we were doing. And despite calling themselves pro-choice, by and large, complaints were made against what we were doing. I won't go into all the details, but in my case there was 10 specific allegations made against me that I was prescribing an unlicensed medication remotely, that I wasn't qualified to do this work, that I was coercing or forcing my pro-life views on these vulnerable women. When the GMC, who had initially endorsed all of these allegations, by the way, when they actually got around to investigating it, they found that none of those allegations could be upheld or could be supported. I will just highlight one or two of them. It's ironic that they say that progesterone was unlicensed, and that is true. It's not licensed for that specific indication that we were given. It's not licensed for reversing abortions, but no medicine is licensed for that. However, in medicine, and I'm sure the Doctors for Life would be aware of this, or anyone working in healthcare, many treatments are given that are not specifically licensed for every condition. For example, a medication or drug is designed for a specific indication, and then 1 or 2 or 10, 20 years later, it's discovered, oh, it actually works in something else as well. And it can be used if it's safe to do so, and if there's good evidence behind that. What they didn't mention is that misoprostol, the second drug, so I mentioned mifepristone is the first drug, and the second drug is taken 1 or 2 days later. Misoprostol is not licensed for abortion. It's licensed for management of ulcer disease, but not for abortion. So it's what's considered an off-license use. It's very effective in inducing and completing abortions, but it's not licensed for that. But the abortion providers did not like to add that in their complaint to the GMC, although in my response that was one of the issues that I highlighted. They also didn't mention there's another drug called methotrexate, which some people here might be on. It's used widely in rheumatoid arthritis. And the Royal College of Obstetricians, who also complained against me, they advocate the use of methotrexate very much for the medical management of ectopic pregnancy, because it is very effective in that indication. But it's not licensed for that. It's licensed for management of chronic inflammatory conditions, but not for ectopic pregnancy. There was a certain degree of, you can call it inconsistency or hypocrisy, or whichever you prefer, but in the complaints made against us, they did not like to highlight these factors, although we did in our follow-up. I was supported by a wonderful organisation called Christian Legal Centre, or Christian Concern with their legal team, the Christian Legal Centre. Because I have to admit, when the allegations came against myself and Eileen Riley, that was at the end of April 2021, my initial reaction was, there's nothing we can do, that's the end, we have to stop this, we're probably going to get struck off once the investigation had taken place. Within 48 hours, Christian Concern, having heard about this plight, because I had to inform some of the pro-life organisations that we could no longer be contacted about this, including the website, the helpline. We had to inform them, and Christian Concern got wind of this. And within 48 hours, they organised a meeting between myself, Eileen, and their legal team. And a wonderful lady called Andrea Williams, who's the Chief Executive of Christian Concern, said, no, no, this is unjust. We are not going to accept this. We will fight this. Andrea, by the way, has just completed the New York Marathon last weekend. It's her first marathon in 11 years, and I'm sure she did a great time. She probably came in the top 3. But I said, well, okay, if that's what you want. And I went with them. And they were very, very, very supportive, very intelligent, and dealt with the case in an extraordinary manner. My legal team actually referred to the initial hearings as basically a kangaroo court, because what was interesting is that none of the evidence was looked at. We provided all the evidence. We got, within 3 days, we had an expert witness supporting our side of the story. Within a few weeks, we got excellent supportive statements from many of the women that we had supported. And we could have got 45, 50 statements if we wanted, but we settled for 10 because they were all different stories. Some of the women had had their babies, some were still expecting their babies. Some of them had tried the treatment and it hadn't worked, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And some had even decided not to go ahead with the treatment. So we got 10 different statements, all outlining that they hadn't been pressurised in any way, that the support they got was excellent and so on. And then we presented all this evidence to the GMC, but they just refused to look at it. And subsequent hearings, we were even told at the outset, oh, we're not going to look at any of the evidence, we're just going to look at the allegations. So eventually, after the third hearing, my legal team said, enough is enough, we're going to have to take this a step further, so let's go to a proper court. So they took the case to the High Court in London. Now, again, admittedly, I didn't expect this would be successful. I thought with the backlog of COVID cases, there was going to be years of a delay before the High Court might take on the case. But surprisingly, having made the application in, I think, around mid-October 2021, we were granted a hearing at the end of February, 24th of February 2022. So within a matter of months, they were going to hear the case. And then suddenly, in January, just after Christmas, the GMC suddenly decided to get their act together. They eventually got themselves an expert witness who, surprisingly, supported almost everything that our expert witness had said, and said that, well, there's not a whole lot wrong with what Dr. Carney has been doing. And so his statement was surprisingly supportive. And at that point, the GMC had no option but to drop the case, because the 6 days before the scheduled High Court hearing, they dropped the case because they had no evidence. They had tried in vain to find any of the women to give a negative statement against me. They hadn't found an expert witness that was prepared to say anything negative against me. And you can't go to court, you can't go to the High Court and with no evidence. So the judge is going to say, okay, can you present your evidence? And if all you've got is, well, we don't have any evidence, Your Honour, but we don't like what that guy is doing, the case really can't proceed any further. So the case was dropped, and the officially revoked. The conditions that had been imposed upon me had been revoked. The main conditions in my case had been that I must not, under pain of death, I must not supply, administer, or promote or advise progesterone for the management of an abortion pill reversal. I was also banned from doing any private work or any voluntary work, but that wasn't so much an issue. So all of those conditions were revoked. But it took 9 months. We had 9 months without any help that we could offer to mothers who were still looking for help. And in that 9-month period, we know that in the UK there was 160 calls made from British women, UK women, to the Heartbeat International Helpline, the international helpline, looking for help. And they had to be all told, I'm very sorry, but that service is not available at the moment to you. We know there were also a number of women from Ireland who had phoned that same helpline and were told that same story, because the doctors courageously providing the service in Ireland understandably decided to be very cautious because of what was happening in the UK. But now that those conditions have been revoked, I'm hopeful that doctors like myself and the doctors in Ireland, Doctors for Life, will be able to start promoting that again. So far, I'm aware in the 9 months that I offered the service before we were banned from doing it. And by the way, we were the first doctors in history to be banned from saving lives. I don't think there's any doctors anywhere else in the world that have had to face that penalty before. So before we were banned from saving lives. It's not a lot, but, and as I mentioned, about 50-55% success rate, but we're aware that 32 babies were born from the work that myself and Eileen Riley have been doing. It's a drop in the ocean, but there are 32 babies, and more importantly, or possibly just as importantly, the psychological, mental health benefits for the mothers involved, I think, is immeasurable. That's a factor that's often overlooked in this when we focus on the babies. And it's not only the mothers, but the fathers in many of the cases. I never thought of the fathers until one of the pictures up there showed me with Amrita and her baby, but on that occasion there were three couples came with their babies for a photo shoot for the Mail on Sunday. And I'd never thought of the fathers until that very moment when the three happy daddies came along, that they were so grateful that someone had helped their partners or their wives to save these little babies, their children, which they now recognised. So it's not only saving the babies' lives, it's saving the health of the mother, protecting the health of the mother. And that also includes situations where the treatment didn't work. And I mentioned that 45 to 50% of the time we try the treatment, the mother tries the treatment, she does everything she can, she takes the treatment as we prescribe, and it doesn't work. And yesterday I had a little bit of a major disappointment. A young woman that I've been helping over the last week and a half. And she had a lot of bleeding, a lot of cramps, but her first scan, a few days after she had taken the mifepristone and then she started progesterone within 12 hours, which was quite good, but she was very early. She was under 6 weeks gestation at that stage. And unfortunately, second scan showed that her baby had died. And that is really difficult to take. So it is a very emotionally demanding service that we try to offer. Eileen and I have discussed this many times, Eileen Riley and myself. And initially, when you get 2 in a row that doesn't work, or 3 in a row doesn't work, it's disheartening, and it makes you feel, should we continue what we're doing? But Eileen put it to me this way. First of all, both of us agree at this stage that in our many years of practicing medicine, and I qualified in 1989 from just up the road here in UCD, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in medicine, much more than anything else I've done in cardiology or general medicine. But just the emotional joy that it brings when you have a successful story, as we do on many occasions. But it's also, there's the downside, is the emotional turmoil, the upset, the anger, frustration that we feel when it doesn't work. But at the same time, we know that we've done our best, and we have to try to console the mothers in those situations, as I did yesterday, by letting the mother know that she has done her best to try and save her baby. And that her baby, I never know whether, because I don't talk about religion to any of the women, but that was one of the accusations against me, but I never bring up religion unless they do. But if I get the feeling that they have some sort of faith background or some belief in an afterlife, I inform them that their baby, that I've no doubt that their baby is at peace and will love them for all eternity, especially for the efforts that they've made to try to save their child. And that, I think, at least in any of the women who've responded, that brings them great consolation. So that is a very important aspect of the work, not only in saving the baby's lives, but helping the mother cope with the trauma of the situation as well. Finally, I'm often asked in these sort of little talks, what message do you have for pro-life groups, pro-life people who want to support pro-life work? And there's lots of messages. From the abortion pill reversal point of view, my main message is to try and educate people as to what's involved, because, as was mentioned by that statement from one of the pro-abortion groups, that there's a lot of misinformation about abortion reversal being put out there. People said, the initial lie that they said, first of all, there's no need for this. Well, we know that there is a need, because more than 4,000 babies have been born in America, in the US, over the last 10 years as a result of their mothers receiving progesterone, having taken the first abortion pill. In the UK, we have small numbers, but there's 32 initially, and now we've got 36 babies born, and hopefully some more on the way. Of those 36, probably maybe 10, 12, up to maybe 14 might have survived even without the treatment, but there are some lives that we have saved that otherwise would not have been saved. So it's certainly not true to say that there's no need for this service. In fact, the reason I got involved was, two different pro-life groups at two different time points came to myself and others who were members of the Catholic Medical Association, pleading with us that mothers were coming to them looking for abortion reversal treatment because they'd heard about it through websites and so on, and we knew nothing about it at the time. That's when I decided to actually look into the issue. This was initially back in 2014, then in 2018, then 6 years after the initial response is when I got involved, having researched it thoroughly over that time period. So there certainly is a need out there, and I think there will be a much greater need with the explosion in the telemedicine and home abortions and pills by post that's taken place. The second lie that they try to portray is that, well, it doesn't work. There might be a need, but we know it doesn't work, and whether you take the progesterone or not, or whether you just wait and see what happens, just don't take the second pill. They say that you're going to have the same outcome anyway. And we know that that's not true. From the studies that have been done and from our own work, we know that there's at least a doubling of the survival rate. And if there was greater awareness, a quicker or a shorter time of interval between the abortion pill and the progesterone treatment, the reversal pill, I'm pretty certain we can increase that 50% up to higher levels of success. And the third lie that they've been trying to portray in recent times is that it's dangerous. So if all there's no need, then it doesn't work. And now it's dangerous that women are going to bleed because of this. And we know that that's not true. The one study that they tried to quote as being a credible study. It was, first of all, a small study involving only 10 patients, 12 initially, but 2 pulled out, where women were given an abortion pill, and then 1 day later were given progesterone or placebo, and then followed up over 2 weeks. What they failed to say is that in that small number, it was only 10, 5 in each group, there was 4 out of 5 women were still pregnant at 15 days in the progesterone group, and 2 out of 5 in the placebo group. So that was a doubling of the survival rate, which is what we say all along. And in terms of bleeding, 2 women bled heavily in the group who received the placebo treatment, one of whom needed a blood transfusion, whereas in the women who received the progesterone, only one woman had a minor bleed, and it didn't require any transfusion or any surgery and was discharged after being assessed. So that study, which they tried to portray as being dangerous because women are bleeding, actually shows that giving progesterone, if a woman changes her mind, actually doubles the survival rate and halves the risk of serious hemorrhaging. And yet they try to say that this is a dangerous treatment. So that's a large part of my involvement in this, is trying to counteract the misinformation that is out there. So I'm trying to educate, and I've been given a number of talks on this issue around the UK and in other places on this. Secondly, never tire of doing what's right. That's the main message I want to try and get across to pro-life groups, Doctors for Life, medical students. A lot of people have asked me or suggested to me that it must have been terribly stressful, what you went through over the last 2 years, the risk of losing your career, losing your house and so on, your credibility and reputation and so on. And the honest answer is it wasn't. It wasn't all that difficult at all. I think largely because of the amount of support that we received from around the world. I got messages of support from every continent, a lot of prayer, a lot of promises of prayer from people, and also the fact of knowing that what we had done was right. I think was a great consolation, certainly to myself and to Eileen. So while it possibly should have been stressful, and I would mention that a number of doctors have committed suicide when they have been investigated by the General Medical Council. But I never felt that stress, and I can only put it down to the fact of the support that we received from all over the world, and knowing that support was there, the prayer, but also knowing that what we were doing was right. There was a famous, for those of you classically minded, a famous politician in Roman times in the 2nd century BC, who every time he gave a speech in the Senate in Rome, every time, no matter what the issue was, he finished up his speech with, "Carthage must be destroyed. Carthago delenda est." You could say aborto delenda est. Abortion must be destroyed. I didn't expect that. That wasn't the point of what I was trying to make. I just thought I'd throw that. His name was Cato, by the way. Cato was in Peter Sellers' films. Cato the Censor. But he finished up with that statement, and every time I give this talk, I always try to finish up with that statement to pro-life people, that never tire of doing what is right, but do it. Do it with courage, do it with honesty, and do it with love. Sean Carney, at one of the founders of 40 Days for Life from Texas, he spoke brilliantly at the London March for Life a few weeks ago. And he pointed out something that I'd never really thought about before, that the whole abortion industry is based on fear, instilling fear into mothers. You can't do this, you can't cope with this, you'll never manage this. Fear of doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, fear of the public. Oh, if I speak out to that, I'm going to be cancelled, I'm going to be criticised. So it's based on fear and silence, instilling silence. So we have to counteract the abortion industry with honesty, because theirs is built on lies, as well as fear is certainly built on lies. So honesty, courage, and love. Everything we do must be done in love. There's nothing worse, there's nothing more damaging, I think, to the pro-life movement than an angry word, an angry response, an angry reaction to something which is very understandable and so easy. The temptation is always there when we're dealing with such critical issues of injustice. But everything we must do must be done in love. So never tire what's doing right, but always do it with charity and with love. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Kearney, a true pro-life hero. And funnily enough, County Navan punching well above their weight today, because we had Padre Tobin addressing us earlier, as is Dr. Kearney from Navan. So we have two pro-life heroes from Navan, so there you go. So I'm going to invite Eilish Mulroy of the Pro-Life Campaign just to give some concluding remarks to you and to present a very special award. And while this is going on, there'll be some buckets passed around. Hopefully you can dig deep to support the work of the Pro-Life Campaign. If you don't have the notes or the coins, we do have the machine that you can tap off at the Merch for Life stand. So Eilish Mulroy, thank you for addressing us, and thank you all for your time and attention with me as well today.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And wow, what an amazing input there from Dr. Kearney. Thank you so much to him and all our speakers. It's wonderful to see so many people here today, and thank you so much, all of you, for coming. I know we had a lot of traffic delays on the way, so I hope that those of you who arrived late still got your money's worth, because this afternoon we've had some amazing speakers. As Wendy said a little earlier, of course, after the COVID pandemic, we really wanted to make sure that our first in-person conference was vibrant, motivating, encouraging, so that we could all go away from today ready for action. And I think that has been the case, and I hope you'll agree. "2022 has been a really busy year for the pro-life movement. At the start of 2022, we had to make up for lost time, really in holding the government to account, and especially the 3-year review that Deputy Padre Tobin spoke about earlier. It's a really important year for us to make our voices heard and to try and make sure that the 3-year review would be an opportunity to step back and look at how the abortion law is operating and pull back on the extreme nature of that law. I think it's worth recapping very briefly on some of the projects. I think a lot of you in this room will have received in recent months a report on our work over 18 months. So I'm not going to talk to you about that. But if you haven't received that and you'd like to, you can do so. You can pick up a copy of that report at the Grassroots at the PLC Network stand. Many of you present here today participated in some of you, all of the things that we've been involved in recent times. So I want to thank you very sincerely for your efforts and your dedication. In May, we held 3 regional outdoor events in Cork, Galway and Donegal. And these were important events politically to show that we are a force that is out there and motivated regionally as well as nationally, and received a lot of positive local press coverage, so something to build on. We were very happy with those events. It was the first time we had done something like that in a number of years. In Dublin, we held another march in September with a good turnout of young people and a fabulous turnout overall, lots of young people there, and that's really encouraging for us. To see a lot of young people and interest from young people, because a big emphasis for us in the pro-life movement and the pro-life campaign is to future-proof the movement, to encourage young people to get involved, to keep the flag flying. And we see how, and we heard from Jackie earlier about the US, they kept the flag flying and things start to change. During the year, we also worked closely with the all-party Oireachtas Life and Dignity Group, a truly amazing group of politicians who do tremendous work for us in speaking up for life in the Dáil and the Seanad. And we're thrilled to have Peadar, of course, here today, and we want to pay a real tribute to Peadar for all that he does in speaking up for life in the Oireachtas. And he also has a number of colleagues who speak up strongly, courageously on the pro-life issue. It was great to see, and it's hard to believe that this is the first time we've gathered in person since 2019, but it was great to see that the first piece of legislation introduced since the abortion law, the first piece of legislation that was proposed since the abortion law was introduced was a pro-life bill. It didn't pass, unfortunately, this time, but it's not gone away. The fetal pain bill relief, it was a fetal pain relief bill, was introduced. When it was introduced, it forced, I suppose, TDs in the Dáil to confront the reality that unborn babies during late-term abortions are not given humanitarian pain relief prior to their lives being ended. It's so ghastly and barbaric to think about that. We need to keep bringing issues like this to the attention of the public and politicians, of course, and doing things like introducing pro-life bills makes sure that those issues can stay to the fore, and we must continue to do that. We couldn't do that kind of thing without the support of Peadar and his colleagues in the Oireachtas. Speaking personally, it's a real privilege for me to assist pro-life members of the Oireachtas in any way that I can. One of the things that our pro-life TDs do is they ask parliamentary questions. It's basically a way to get information that is otherwise quite difficult to get. And it helps to shed light on what's really happening under the new abortion law. And an example of one of those just recently, which is not information that's been out there yet, thanks to information from the HSE, obtained as a result of a recent parliamentary question from Deputy Sean Canny, a fellow Galway person, one of our great voices for the pro-life issue in the Oireachtas. The question related to the reimbursement payments for abortions, and it was revealed that last year there were 8,284 first consultations made, but from the same information, payments were made proportionate to 6,683 abortions. So we can tell, therefore, from that parliamentary question that 1,601 women who initially sought to have an abortion didn't go through with it. That's 1,600 babies who have been born in the last year who came perilously close to being aborted. That's something to celebrate. And not the 6,700 abortions that the Abortion Rights Campaign wanted to celebrate when the 2021 abortion numbers were released. We have a real cause for celebration, the positive, life-affirming cause. The Department of Health doesn't willingly issue this kind of information, so that's really the importance of the parliamentary question. So we thank our pro-life TDs for that. And it's really important for us in the context of things like the 3-day waiting period. That kind of information is very important, and it can be used to educate politicians that the 3-day waiting period should stay. So for the recent 3-year review, which it's still ongoing, but there was a public consultation, and we organised through an online platform that people could make a submission via the platform, and nearly 3,000 people made submissions via that online platform. Many of you in this room probably did that too. And we also encouraged people to make their own personal submissions, which was a little bit more difficult. The infrastructure was quite difficult to do that, so many of you did that too. And thank you for doing that. And it would be our hope that those submissions, those excellent submissions made by many people in this room, are paid attention to by politicians as they finalise the review. We have to continue to participate in these processes to ensure the rights of unborn children and their mothers are represented. But it's important to note that even though we encourage everyone to participate in the 3-year review and make our submissions, we've also been deeply critical about the way it's been carried out and the one-sided manner in which it's been carried out. And we will continue to do that. For any movement to grow and develop, the key is to encourage our younger members. And I want to really thank the Students for Life team. It was great to see some of them on stage earlier for the excellent work they do to encourage and support young people in standing up for life. And I know even from my own children who are younger how difficult that's already becoming, even in secondary school. They deserve a clap. It's really heartening if you have time to check out the Students for Life Facebook page, because they often have testimonies on there from pro-life students about why they're pro-life, and they're really helpful for other students to read and encouraging. So you guys are the future of the movement, and we're really proud of you in Students for Life. We also run other programs for young people, like the Future Leaders program, like our internship program, and in the coming year we'll be developing them more and really investing a lot of time and resources in the campaign. Resources, of course, that are only made possible by all of your help and support to really try and encourage the youth programs. I want to thank Elaine Noonan, who spoke to you earlier, who is the program manager for Community Connect. It was wonderful to hear about all the wonderful work that she and the Dublin team of Community Connect are doing, helping women experiencing an unplanned pregnancy. On a personal basis, I'm really honoured to be involved in the work of Community Connect in my own local area. It's incredible work and very fulfilling work. So well done to all the Community Connect team. And if people are interested in getting involved on that side of the work, because sometimes some of the work can be quite challenging, the policy, all that kind of thing, the work of Community Connect, physically going with a box to give it to a new mother and seeing, and being able to help and see how that can have an impact on somebody is really, really rewarding. So I'd encourage you to visit that stand. There's lots of fantastic stands out there, but to visit that stand if you are interested in that type of work. I want to thank Jackie Asco. I know she had to rush in from her programme on Spirit Radio. There was terrible traffic and she got caught too. But to thank her for her words on the US decision and the overturning of Roe versus Wade. It's really important that we celebrate those wins and follow those developments and learn what we can from the positive that's working in other countries. I also wanted to give a just shout out to all the groups who are present on the far side of the curtain there. It's great to see groups like Doctors for Life, One Day More, and Women Hurt support organisations, as well as this year, for the first time, we've invited the local pro-life groups to come and be present. And we're hoping to develop that in the coming years. So we're really, really glad to see so many people here. The stands will be available for about another half hour after we finish shortly. If you'd like to visit the stands, please do so, because there's some great work going on in different organisations and locally as well. I want to thank especially the guest speakers who travelled a long distance to be with us. Thank you, Lois, for your wonderful talk earlier, which was really encouraging, and for the work that you're doing with ADF. And we're very grateful for your commitment to that work, and we wish you very well in your marriage coming up next year. He's getting married next May, I think. A special word of thanks to Dr. Dermot Carney. The work you're doing in saving lives of babies is probably the most heartening work from our point of view here, all of us today. It's actually, you can physically tell that these babies were survived because of your intervention. It's incredibly heartening, and it's terrible, the attacks and the criticism you've suffered, and the fact that you haven't allowed that to deter you. We're so impressed with that, and thank you so much. We're very proud to have you back here as an Irishman, and proud to claim you as an Irishman. And I suppose just to say that regardless of how the 3-year review wraps up, we'll be moving forward and growing support to try and address Ireland's massive abortion rates. We know there have been over 21,000 abortions on Irish women between abortions here and some who have still travelled since the abortions, and the figures that we have had since the abortion law was implemented. And we just have to continue to promote positive alternatives to abortion in this country. Let's not forget that the pro-life movement represents 1 in 3 voters based on the 2018 referendum result. That's a lot of people, and from our own research carried out by Amórach last year, we know that 89% of the public, no matter what way they voted in the abortion referendum, support positive alternatives to for women prior to an abortion taking place, that they would be informed about what else is available. We're going to do whatever it takes to get a result on that issue. Just this morning, I'm not sure if any of you heard, the government, it was reported in the Irish Times that telemedicine abortion, which was a temporary provision introduced at the beginning of COVID, there's a recommendation that it will be made permanent. That's a pretty shocking decision, given that just in the last 2 weeks, it came to light in a report in the Irish Examiner about the minor being forced into a room and coerced into taking abortion pills. It's hard that I know Katie mentioned earlier, and Wendy, it's hard to believe that with that information that they would still go forward with telemedicine abortion. The reality is that the HSE themselves, in a reply to Carol Nolan TD to a parliamentary question back in March of 2022, themselves acknowledged that in-person consultation is more likely to be able to ensure that there isn't a coercive element. I'm paraphrasing, but effectively the HSE knows that there is a potential for this type of coercion. They now have the information from the Irish Examiner report, and yet they're proceeding with that. I don't really understand that. I think the fact that there's such an abuse of a minor was reported by a state organisation. It wasn't a pro-life movement making this allegation. It was something reported that's happened, that they know has happened, and they're still proceeding without having massive outcry from the media. I just don't understand that. And I know we talk about the bias of the mainstream media. That is an example above any in recent times that is just truly abhorrent. We're not going to stop trying to make the change. Sometimes it can be disheartening and you can feel things are stacked against us, but then you come to an event like this and you see so many people so committed. I think that's what really encourages us to stay motivated and moving forward. So that's all I have to say. There's one last element to today, a very important element. It's the last one, but very important. The volunteers for the work for the pro-life movement and work for the campaign are just amazing people. I want to thank, again, from the bottom of my heart, all of the people here who make our work possible, who do the lobbying on a local level, who do fundraising, and who continue to participate in our events and attend our PLC network events, and really help to keep the campaign moving forward. Every year, well, yeah, give yourselves a clap, please do. Every year at this event, we aim to recognise a volunteer for his or her input and involvement. And this year we chose a man who's been active for many years. He has a particular interest in media and communications, but also someone who's very happy to put his nose to the grindstone and do whatever he's asked. I think Sheila will attest to that, because I think she asks some things quite regularly. Nothing is too challenging for this man. He's always ready and willing to help. As well as being very involved in the pro-life campaign, he's also a column writer on media matters for the Irish Catholic newspaper. And we made inquiries of somebody in his local pro-life group recently about his recent activity. And she put it so succinctly, yes, I'm looking at you, Sinead, you know I'm talking about you, that I had to just read what she wrote to us. So she sent a WhatsApp message with her, an outline of his activity. She said, he's a skillful mentor and presenter on the Pro-Life Network, PLC Network letter writing workshops. He's a powerful and influential letter writer himself, frequently published, and always spot on in a concise and dignified style. He's a great supporter and promoter of the work of Community Connect, an excellent pro-life representative in interview situations, proactive and supportive to others in challenging politicians in County Wicklow, and we know there's a few challenging ones there, on the abortion legislation and amendments. All this done modestly with thorough knowledge of the issues, great command of the language, as you'd expect from a retired English teacher, and genuine charisma. And she finished her report by saying, congratulations to her colleague in Wicklow Pro-Life, Brendan O'Regan. So come on up here, Brendan, to receive your award. Come in here. So that's it. That's all we have for today. I'm not sure, I hope we're not doing too badly time-wise. So thank you to Wendy for emceeing the day and to the RDS for this venue. Let's go home encouraged and motivated to deliver real change. Gurmil Malgif Galer.